Now, everybody has anxiety in their life around something, and it's natural to have fears. As a parent, when you're growing up, when you feel unstable or when you're in a new environment, anxiety is normal, that feeling of anxiety. But when it starts to take over your life and every day is filled with anxious thoughts, it can become really draining. And it's what I started to realize, that this new addiction to anxiety had come in for me to cope. So if ever anything felt too big or something was unstable in my life, I would just be anxious instead, because I knew how to be anxious and it was easy.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Authors on Mission podcast. So, picture this. You're standing in front of a mirror, and the reflection staring back at you feels like a stranger. The person you see is desperately seeking love everywhere except the place it's always existed, within. Today's guest knows this feeling intimately because she's lived it for years. On today's episode, we are chatting with Kelly Saward, author of Desperate to be Loved, Little Notes of Self-Discovery, a radio presenter and well-being mentor who's turned her addiction and anxiety into a roadmap for self-acceptance. Kelly's story is about overcoming struggles, but also about discovering that the very struggles we try to escape might be our greatest teachers. So grab a cup of tea, find a comfortable spot, and get ready to meet somebody who will shine a light on the love that we are seeking and missing, waiting to be discovered. Kelly, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, Danielle. It's lovely to be here.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Of course, it's an honor to meet you and to see you. I'm glad to have you on, and I think we're gonna have a wonderful conversation, something that a lot of people can learn from and really benefit from today. And of course, we'll touch upon some writing tips too for all the authors in the room. But before we dive into the book, let's learn a little bit about yourself. I'm wondering if you can give
Sure.
us a little bit of background. You were a radio presenter, so it must have been
I
interesting.
am.
Yeah, it must be interesting to go from, speaking and talking to transitioning into writing for the book. I'm wondering what that was like for you. What sparked the transition and when you decided to write your book?
Well, I actually started writing before I started presenting on the radio. So I think it was a confidence thing, really. I've always really loved talking, sharing, and feeling connected. So for me, sort of connection in life is everything. To feel like you belong somewhere or you can be understood, I think enables us to be the best that we can be. But whenever I felt low confidence or a lack of love for the person that I am, or trying to fit into different spaces, if I felt embarrassed or shame around what I was going through or what I was feeling, I would write. So I was always writing, really just to understand myself and have that deeper understanding of what's going on inside, which is what led me to a lot of, I think, realization and acceptance around that it's okay to, the cliche, it's okay not to to not be okay, and that to honor what we're going through to enable to move through it. Because I think the more we push things away, the more they take over, essentially. So writing started first.
Mhm.
And actually, I was a guest on the radio to talk about my book and my journey and my story. And yeah, I just loved it. And someone said to me, "Have you ever thought about doing this?" And I thought, well, not especially, but and yeah, now it's just evolved. I do quite a lot of shows and I talk to people all the time, sharing their own stories, and it's great. I just love it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important to share those stories and bring it to light because you never know who's going to read the book and learn from it and be moved by it. So it's incredible. And I think a lot of people can relate to what you describe as being addicted to anxiety and using anxiety as a safety net, which are some, core topics in your book. I'm wondering if you'd like to shine a light on that. How do you recognize that anxiety is serving as a safety net in your life, and how do you overcome that?
Well, I think is what happened was a long, long time ago when I was trying to cope with difficulty, my solution was to escape from what I was feeling. So that might have looked like going out late, partying when I was younger before I had children, lots of things like that, drinking, smoking, all the things, to fit in and show up. I did all those things. Then I had my children. And whenever I felt overwhelmed, then I noticed that I would start to be anxious around things. So that essentially became my way of coping. So if something wasn't going right and I didn't know how to manage, I would sit in a place of fear, but excessively. Now, everybody has anxiety in their life around something, and it's natural to have fears, as a parent, when you're growing up, when you feel unstable or when you're in a new environment. Anxiety is normal, that feeling of anxiety. But when it starts to take over your life and every day is filled with anxious thoughts, it can become really draining. And is what I started to realize that this new addiction to anxiety had come in for me to cope. So if ever anything felt too big or something was unstable in my life, I would just be anxious instead because I knew how to be anxious and it was easy.
Yeah, of course. But then, of course, we overcome it and we grow from it too. And I can see how that is also reflected in "Desperate to Be Loved," which is such a beautiful title, by the way. "Desperate to Be Loved," so raw, so honest. I'm wondering what it was like to, be so vulnerable in your book. As an author, and for all the authors out there, I know what it's a struggle to be so open, especially when you're talking about such sensitive topics. So, how did you find that balance as you wrote?
I think the title was something that I did go back and forward with, and I had an editor who said, I'm not sure if that's right. But every time I thought about what was in the book, that is how I felt when I was going to all these different things. So when I was young and I was trying to cope, it was this desperation to fit in and feel loved and connected. When I hung around with people that weren't really my people, but I just wanted to fit in. When I wore things that were, not necessarily things I felt comfortable in, but because I thought they looked good, because I felt that's what I should wear. It was all this desperation to fit in and to be accepted. So when I was sharing all of the different things in my book, that's what came through, this desperation to be loved and to be accepted. And I couldn't, it is a bit of a vulnerable title, and people close to me in some ways took their own personal stance on it as though I wasn't loved by those around me. And it wasn't about that. It was about how I felt about myself and why I ended up in the situations that I did. So that's why I arrived at that title because yeah, I just so desperately wanted to fit in or be loved or, accepted. But I realized that I didn't feel that way towards myself, which is why I'd got so far away from who I am for a while there.
Right, right. No, I get that, of course. And, you also wrote the quote, when we build habits from fear, we lose ourselves. When we build habits from love, we find ourselves. So I think that directly relates to what you were just talking about because, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. When you're finding that truth within yourself, you realize it is kind of like a habit, right? Can you elaborate on that? What does that mean? And how do you break those habits?
Well, I suppose anxiety became the habit, as I said, and that was what the fear. So I think if we sit in a place of fear, we lose ourselves ever so slightly because we do things because we think we should, because it might seem like the right thing to do. It might be something we've done for a very long time that we're comfortable with. It's become the habit itself. Whereas when we do it from love, we start to find ourselves, and that can feel uncomfortable because we're doing things and putting boundaries in that we haven't done before. So that can be really challenging to do the things from a place of love, knowing that you don't really want to go out and do that thing because it's not your thing. But for years and years, you've done it because that's what the right thing to do is. That's where you kind of fit in with the people that you're spending time with. So you just keep showing up anyway. But to put a boundary in place and to start acknowledging what it is you need, which might look different, to, impact on your well-being in a positive way. That's kind of looking after yourself from a place of love. And when we build habits like that, we connect back to who we are. When we do fear-based actions, it's often to try and fit into spaces that might not suit us, and that's where we lose ourselves. So
Definitely. And we definitely don't want that. We need to stay grounded and keep a hold of who we truly are ourselves, our identity.
exactly that.
Yeah. Now, I'd love to shine a light on that cover of yours because it's just a beautiful color right there. I'm wondering if you can, kind of show it off to the camera for us. Did you have a say in the design work in that, or was it
Yeah. So I did. So I'm not really a great artist, I would say. I'm quite creative, I've come to realize, because creativity comes in all different ways. But I drew the cover with a pencil and paper, and this wonderful guy, Theo, his name was, took my terrible drawing and made it into this cover. And we went back and forward a few times, but I love the sea, I love the water. My star sign is Cancer, so I'm really connected to kind of that water. I just love being by the sea, it's so healing. Really love the moon and astrology to get a deeper understanding of myself. So that was important. There's a figure here kind of looking out to finding myself, really, because it's desperate to be loved, little notes of self-discovery. And essentially in the book, that's what I've done, just slowly discovered who I am. And blue's my favorite color as well.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's what it was really. And yeah, I just want it to be simple but meaningful. So to me, that kind of explains me how I'm, looking for this place, which
absolutely.
essentially is in here. Yeah.
Right. No, thank you for that. And I always love to hear about those stories about the covers because, it's people don't always talk about the covers, but it's such an important part of the book.
Yeah.
Now, another thing about the book is you include a lot of poetry throughout. I'm wondering how that came to be integrated with the actual, the rest of the text. And is that something that you usually do, like poetry as a method of release? What do you think?
Well, actually, I always used to like writing poems at school. And they come quite easily. So I don't really think about writing a poem. Now, I don't want to say channel them, but when I write a poem, I connect to a period of life that I've been through, and I just write stuff down and it just comes through. And everything that I have shared in my book essentially becomes summarized by a poem at the beginning of each chapter. So there are 13 chapters. And at the start of each chapter, there's a poem about that chapter. So Desperate to Be Loved is chapter one, and it's like new doors opening and Feel It to Heal It and Lean In and all these different things. But the poem, I think, captures the essence of what that chapter's about. And it's just something that where I've meditated or felt into it, that poem, yeah, it's really about how I felt. And I think poetry, particularly in a mindfulness sense, because I'm a mindfulness and meditation teacher, um, poetry can be really powerful to connect with people and enable them to open up their emotions. So I decided to put them in to the book as well. Yeah.
Amazing. No, I love that. And I think it's also a great way to kind of break up the text and, offer a little bit of something really powerful in the poem, but then using that as a way to introduce the content of each chapter. I think that's a really great idea.
Mm,
Yeah, it engages the reader, it gets them in the right mindset for what that chapter might be about. It's a great technique that maybe a lot of authors can use themselves in their own writing. I like that.
yeah.
um,
Also, you can just kind of pick, you don't have to read the book. It's not a novel as such. You don't have to read it cover to cover. It's just really to, you can pick it up and get something from it, is my hope, however you're feeling, and just read a tiny bit of it.
Yeah, so was that part of your plan from the beginning then to create a book that could be picked up at any point and put back down? Was that intentional?
No, I don't really have many plans, to be honest. I very much trust in the timing of things. And all I knew is that I wanted to, because my journey with anxiety had been so difficult, I just wanted to share something
Mm.
that was going to help people.
Understood. Yeah, and I could see how it definitely has helped people. I'm wondering, have you received any positive feedback since it's been out? And sometimes people reach out to the authors and talk about how they've used their strategies. Has that happened to you yet? I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I had some really lovely people that I didn't even know, which I think is really nice because I don't know about you, but I feel I've had more support from people that aren't closest to me, through people that I don't know, where they've read the book and really related to it and have said, oh, I could have written something like that. That's how I felt. I feel that way when you explain it. That's how I feel. So to enable someone the space to not feel lonely with going through that terrible time has been really great for me to, receive feedback on. So that's been really nice. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I like that. And it's an inspiration. It's like, you finally made it. You went through the whole process of writing and then, you finally get that reward knowing that you've made a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the writing process like for you in general? Were there any particular challenges that you overcame that you think the audience might be able to learn from?
I was so grateful for the editor that I had because one thing I do notice is that when I'm trying to get someone to understand me, I realize that I say the same thing, but just in many different ways. So that was really challenging in the writing process, just getting that across without being too repetitive. Because I think when I'm really passionate about a subject or a topic or how I felt, I notice in life where I've tried to be understood or fit in or work through things, I try and say things in multiple different ways to try and gain that connection. And as I've got older and the more work I've done, I've realized that some people just aren't our people. So we don't need to say things in 20 different ways. We just need to accept, when you've tried, and enough is enough. And then the right people come, and then all these things are so easy anyway. But that did filter through to my writing. A lot of my different traumas and challenges did actually. They're not good enough. The thinking someone would have definitely written something better. Is it worth publishing? Should I even bother? All these thoughts came up, like constant, and then I kind of got out of my own way and thought if I can just help one person feel less alone with the struggles that I had, then it's worth it. And I've done that. So I feel, yeah, really grateful. But I did have a lot of challenges and struggles and thought about not publishing it at all, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
Understood. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I think it's something that we all go through, right? Thinking, is my idea good enough? Is my writing good enough? And I think it's something that a lot of authors need to overcome. One of my most recent blog posts was about that, about, reframing your mindset, saying, you know what, my book is something that other people will read. Someone's going to benefit from it. So I can see how that was quite the challenge for you as well. I understand that. But at the end of the day, it came out, and here we are now. And like we said, you're getting that feedback, and you've accomplished what you were hoping, which is to move people and to make a difference. So, all that
Yeah.
being said, I'm wondering what's next then on the agenda for you.
I recorded it on Audible because a lot of people I know wanted to listen to it rather than read it. So that was really interesting process to record it. So I love doing that. And I think with sharing space with people like yourself, doing podcasts, and I've done my own podcast and I do a lot of stuff on the radio, I felt the Audible version was really important. And I have loosely written another book that I haven't done anything with, because I think it's just not the right time for it right now, just through different things that I'm going through in life at the moment. But I love writing, I'm always writing, and my intention is to share another book when I know what that's to look like. But right now, it's just a work in progress while I do other things. So, but I think it's so important that we keep writing all the time, even if it's just tiny bits, because there's so much healing and understanding to be had just in the process, even if it's just for yourself.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. And, if people do want to get in touch though and kind of stay up to date with what you're up to, what's the best way for them to get in to contact you?
So my website is room478.com and .co.uk. And on there, everything about me is on there. My podcast, my book, my things and events I do, retreats and sessions. So anyone can find out about me on there. And the reason behind that was because I just wanted to create a room or a space where people can come online or in person, depending on what I'm running at a specific time. And the 478 is for the 478 breathing technique, which I don't know if you've heard of before. But yeah, that's
Now tell us a little bit more about that. I have heard of that 478 technique 'cause it has come up in a couple of the books I've helped clients with for their editing process, their ghostwriting, but be it. But for the audience, what's that technique and how can it help us with writing, for example?
So I think sometimes, well, we always get overwhelmed at points. Overwhelm is a natural thing for us to feel, and stopping to sit down in meditation can be really challenging because people think meditation is to have a clear mind, to stop and have absolute peace, whereas that's not what meditation is at all. And we have difficult meditations, we have thought-filled meditations, but the act of doing something small is really important. So breathing techniques, just connecting with our breathing is really important. And the 478 breath is really good for sleep. It might be too long for some people, so you can adapt it, but it's just breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 7 seconds, and breathing out for 8 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good technique, especially to keep yourself grounded and to keep yourself mindful, especially when it comes to writing. And we might be having the thoughts that you mentioned before. If the book's not good enough, it's a good way to just keep you centered, I'd say. So a really amazing
Mm.
tip there. So yeah, I'm wondering then as we begin to wrap up, we chat about yourself and the book, but what else do you think the audience might want to learn from you, and what can they hold with them as they continue on with their days? What's the last piece of advice you think you'd like to offer them? What do you
I just think from a writing perspective, the more that we share our own story, whether that's by sharing space like this or by writing a book, you're going to find your people. Some conversations will feel easier than others. Some books will be easier to read than others. But the more that we show up and we're able to share time and space and be open, the closer we come to who we are. And you can feel when you're able to be safe to be yourself. Some spaces you won't, and it's foul, others you will. And it's the same with writing. Something will connect with you and something won't. So I would say if you could just be a little bit more yourself every day, whether that's writing something down, without judgment, on purpose, that's the best thing that we can do. Just keep showing up, really.
I love that. And I like that you said writing down on purpose, right? Making sure that you intentionally plan time to actually do it and to write, and then it helps you find your truest self, like you mentioned. So incredible. Um,
Mm.
this is exactly why we do this show, really. I mean, you remind us that no matter what you're going through, whatever obstacles we have, it's not our purpose. It is our purpose to overcome it and to learn from it. So I think it's great that you were willing to sit and talk about this and to write about your fear and to share your discoveries because it's a gift for anyone who's still learning and needs to follow their path themselves. So
Was that your intention by setting up the podcast in the first place? Was just to kind of give authors that platform and advice and support to keep driving forward? Is that what led you to it?
Well, definitely. There's so many writing tips out there, especially starting off. You never really know what method's going to be best for you until you try a bunch. So it's great to, always have different authors on who offer these techniques and help us to grow. So, I really appreciate what you're doing here. And I think Desperate to Be Loved in particular is a amazing way for people to find that. And you also have a companion journal too, which I'm not sure if we talked too much about yet. I'm wondering if you'd like to shine a book about that because that's also something that people can actually, physically get involved with, right?
Yes, so I did publish a journal. So a lot of the work that I do, so the journal is called Little Notes of Self-Discovery. So it's for people, there's prompts in there, there's a bit of advice on journaling. I mean, there's no real guidance on how to journal. We freely journal how we want.
Right.
But I published the journal alongside it because through the work that I do, I actually hold journaling workshops where people can come along, share a meditation, and then afterwards we kind of explore what's come up and just enable people to just be with their experience and kind of listen to what's going on inside for them and write that out and just see what comes through. So it's really powerful. So I think because my writing process always is stemmed from journaling, that's why I publish the journal with it as well. So I'll often, yeah, have like groups where I'll share that and we go through the different prompts and they take that away and they keep it to just go on their own journey. And in the hope that it brings a bit of lightness inside, really.
Understood. Right. So if people are interested in that too, that can be found on your website too to book that. If you have a
Yes.
retreat or find out. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
everything's on the website. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So guys, we're gonna put the link to that in the description box of the podcast today. So when we're finished up, you can go ahead and click right on over and get immersed in the world of Kelly. It's amazing. Well, I
Thank
think
you, Danielle.
of course, yeah, and thank you for coming on. It's been a wonderful conversation. We talked a lot about love and anxiety and the courage to discover who you really are. So, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And to the listeners today, if Kelly's story resonates with you, be sure to check out Desperate to Be Loved and the links in the description box. Get in touch, stay connected. And until next time, just remember the magic you're seeking isn't somewhere out there. It's already inside you, waiting to be discovered. So keep writing your story, keep seeking your truth, and showing up for yourself with the same compassion you'd offer your dearest friend. So this has been the Office on Mission podcast, and we'll see you next time, everybody. That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.